Welcome to the new episode of the Marketing Meeting. I have a special guest today, Adamson. He's an expert in all disciplines of brand. I get to know him through his books and articles about marketing. He's the co-founder of Metaforce and then also an Adjunct Associate Professor of NYU Stern School of Business. In the past, he was the chairman America of Landor Associates. Landor is a global brand consulting firm, and there he worked with many iconic brands across industries. Welcome, Ellen. Thank you for joining me on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm really happy that we are finally doing this conversation. We know each other for 3 years already, and now I'm in New York, and it's a very great time to be in touch. And I would like to start with the concept of change. There was a quote that I really like, which says, "The only constant in life is change." So the way we live, the way companies operate, the way brands do marketing is always changing. Well, if you look back into the history, 100 years ago, the change was there. It was also a part of life. But what has changed lately is the pace of change is so fast now. So that every day there's like a new platform that I'm hearing the name of, the creatives that attracts people's attention, the channels, the discovery of a new product or the way we shop, everything is new every day. So as a marketer, I even feel exhausted time to time, so because I cannot keep up with all of these things that are happening. So how can brands and marketers keep up with this constant and fast change that we are going through nowadays?
Great question to start with. It's easy to say, oh, things are changing and you have to move faster. The hard thing is moving faster. In my last book, it was called Shift Ahead, and it talked about why so many companies know they have to change, but can't change. And, I'll give you two stories from that. One is that you have to realize that you as an individual don't like to change. You're more comfortable doing what you did yesterday than changing it. So people go to the office or go to their desk, they have a routine and they're in a routine. And when you're in a routine, you're just on autopilot. You're not even seeing what's out there. So part of it is to realize that human nature is more comfortable with the past, and to really change, you have to, quote unquote, lean into it. And one way to lean in is to, the critical thing is to see it coming in time to do something about it. Most companies fail to change because by the time they see it, it's too late. Their competitors have already jumped on it. They'll try to do it, but you don't execute perfectly on the first time. So, part of it is to see the change soon enough so you have a possibility of seizing it. And seeing what's going on, everyone talks about it. Oh, you can see what's happening in front of you. It's really hard to see what's around the corner. I'll tell you a quick story. It used to be when I was at Unilever in my early days, I'd come into the office and someone would say, "Did you see that ad on television from this competitor?" And I go, "Oh, no." And you go look at, "Oh my God, they're doing this." And I thought that's, it seemed like that we could always do that. But I was recently visiting my daughter who's at a university, and I was staying in a university hotel, and I was, at the gym streaming television, and all of a sudden what I saw on my tablet was completely ads I'd never seen before. And I realized that everything I see on television is curated for somebody like me. And all of a sudden I was, pretending to be a 20-year-old at university, and I saw completely different companies I'd never heard of. So that traditional barometer for me, or that radar for me, was looking at television and seeing what's out there or programming. It's ineffective anymore because, it's being curated for you, and you'll never see anything that's outside of what they think you want. So seeing what's out there is really hard to do unless you really work at it. You have to get out of your bubble. You have to talk to different people. You have to travel. You have to, take a different way to walk to work every day. Because if you don't even see it, by the time it's on the news, by the time the Wall Street Journal reports it, by the time you see it on social media, it's probably almost too late. So part of it is to be a better at seeing around the corner. And you have as an individual to be a little bit paranoid and say, I got to get out from just answering emails. I've got to, I've got to zoom out and focus my eyes.
I think this is a really important topic because even back when I was working at Nike, where you can imagine that Nike is a company that knows their customers and clients and so on, because they do great brand marketing. There were times that we had like days and nights we were spending at the office. And then we were having these offsites to discover the industry and discover what people are doing at the street. Just like, going to the zoo and, checking out what are the animals are doing. But this is not even there. We used to be very focused in the work and in the office. But now this is not an option anymore. I mean, you have to really just, pay attention to what's going on out there, I guess.
Yeah, and try to get some peripheral vision. If you're only focusing on here's my product and I got to do this and this is the problem, and to be successful in business you have to focus. Yeah. But to be successful in change you have to unfocus and
follow change.
Left and right, and that's hard to do both. But to be a good marketer, if you're not in touch, the only way you're staying in touch with your market is by reading a market research report, you're in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. So this comes to the point that brands used to differentiate themselves with either product innovation or different type of brand marketing, storytelling, because when you do brand marketing and you just air it on the channel, on the TV, then most of the people see it. So that's how the brands were differentiating themselves, either through the product features or through very different product marketing, brand marketing that they used to do. However, this is not the case anymore because there are lots of products out there. Every day there's a new product under the same category just launching. And also brand marketing, everyone is doing brand marketing or a type of marketing today. How has this shifted today? What's your opinion on this? The differentiation of a brand?
Most of the differentiation, when I started in consumer packaged goods, most of the differentiation, as you said, was from the product. You would formulate a product that had a difference. And if that difference was relevant and irrelevant and different, then you would just tell customers, here's why you should buy our product. And the beauty of it was once you identified relevant differentiation, it lasted a fairly long time. It was hard for competitors to copy you. And if you had a good product story, so one of the brands was Dove soap. And way back when, it had a unique product. It was not really a soap. It was, a different formulation. So it would actually perform better and making your skin feel better. And that benefit lasted for years. So they could just go out and tell that story. And it was a long time before every brand did that. But those days are over. The ability to come up with something, a sustainable competitive advantage, or few and far between, maybe 5 a year, and it lasts shorter. So basing your marketing on a product difference is really almost impossible. In fact, when I started in marketing, I was called a product manager. That was what they called us. That then became a brand manager. Yeah. But even that is hard. So, step one, I think, is to step away and say, look, if we can come up with a product that, makes the sound better or cancels the noise or makes video conferencing easy or whatever it is, great. But don't assume that could be a starting point. That could be step one, but that's not the game anymore. Part of it is now to think about how you create an experience, a customer experience that is differentiated on many different levels so that it's just not the product works better or tastes better or lets you run faster. It's a whole connected experience that is harder for a competitor to copy and gives you a little bit more time to communicate why my brand experience is better than that brand experience. From consideration to purchase to usage to problem to solution.
I really like the notion of the sustainable competitive advantage is no longer the case today. I think, I guess in your new book that's coming up soon, Seeing the How of Transforming What People Do, Not Buy, to Gain Market Advantage, is talking about that too, right? If it focuses on consumer experience as a competitive advantage rather than getting yourself differentiated with a really niche product feature, right?
Right. Again, back to the Mad Men days when I started, we would focus, if I were in a coffee, I worked in the coffee category, and you would focus on, is your coffee tasting great? Do you have the right bean? Does it right blend? And but you can't differentiate. You have to zoom out now and say, all right, somebody is going to drink our coffee. How do we create an experience around the consumption, the purchase, the usage? And so zooming out and saying, how does that experience fit? And moving beyond the product is clear. And that even goes down to positioning. When we used to do brand positioning, most of the brand positioning I worked on early on was what your product did and how it did it. FedEx delivered packages quickly and they did it overnight. That was their story. Now lots of people can, first of all, packages overnight are not that interesting anymore in the world of double clicking it. But that what and how story for most companies, brands, and businesses is not differentiable. You can't differentiate on what you do and how you do it because everyone does it the same way. It may be better. You have to build your brand story often on who you are as a person or a company, what you're delivering as an experience, and why you're doing something, because authenticity matters. And so part of the whole shift is moving away from just describing, here's a pencil and here's it's yellow and it helps for people to even know what a pencil is, right? And saying, we're going to help you be a better doodler. And so our tools are going to help you be more creative because using a pencil helps you think in a less linear way because we are about creativity. That is a story you can maybe own. Just saying I have a pencil that writes and you can erase with it, not that interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, in that case, for example, if a brand comes up to you and says, okay, how do we start and where do we start? Because, I mean, you are already challenging the concept of brand positioning because it used to be like, okay, what's our product? What's our differentiation point? And what are we delivering different than others, right? But today it has changed. So when I'm sure that companies are coming to you because of your work at Metaforce, and what do you recommend to them? I know it's a general question, but what do you recommend to them to how to start, rather than only coming up with the product differentiation piece?
Well, let me just backtrack and say, part of it is, we live in a world of a sea of similarity. You go into any store and it's really hard to tell the difference between one product and another. You in any category, of course, from consumer goods and toothpaste and shampoos, almost impossible. But even anything from cell phones to fast food. So it's really hard to build a story on it. But the one thing for sure is if you can start there, but you have to make sure you can execute on it better than something else, so anyone else, because the average is over. If you can just do something averagely, if I can only do an average pencil, no one's going to care about it. So where we start is really understanding, what is a company great at? What you as an organization, what can you do better than anyone else? Now you have to do a lot of things equal to somebody, but if we could identify what is the organization's real strength, it could be in the product area, it could be in creating an experience, it could be in their passion because they are purpose driven and they want to make the world a better place. And but ultimately, since execution matters, and if you can't execute great, you could have a great brand story, but if you don't have an organization that can deliver that brand story, you're cooked. So we try to start with both understanding what they're trying to do, but what can they be great at, not what can they do averagely. Because if they can't be great at something, we work with a lot of clients and they want to buy a brand idea, and we look at their tech companies and we look at their ability to be more conceptual, be less engineering, look at their marketing budget and say they don't have a lot of marketing, they don't have a lot of communication. They don't have people who understand that they came from the world of engineering and linear solutions and are not conceptuals. And they may want to do an emotional story like they've seen for Nike. And we say, look, that could work but your company and your business model won't allow you to be extraordinary at that. You can maybe do a good job, but no one notices good anymore. Today, everyone knows that the most powerful marketing tool is word of mouth. Everyone says, get me something, Alan, that will go viral. Get me something that will succeed on social media. And the strategy for doing that is, if you say, how do we do it? And unfortunately, the strategy is easy, which is you have to do something extraordinary. No one shares ordinary. No one says, I did a podcast and the people could hear me and it was okay. People will either share, did you see the podcast with Alan? And the sync, the voice and the picture didn't match. It was confusing. Or they'll say, it was an incredible story. You should listen to it. But no one talks about the middle. So part of it is figuring out what a company can really execute well as a starting point before you even make any recommendation, because every category is driven by word of mouth. And if you only do average ads or average product service or average customer service, you're cooked. So understanding as a starting point, I tell this story, when I was, I wrote this last book called Shift Ahead, and we talked about this issue. And if you don't have the right DNA in the company, you can't do well. My co-author at that point was Joel Steckel, who's a professor at NYU. He said, look, I love basketball, and I thought I was going to be I wanted to do that when I was in high school, but my DNA only got me to 5'9", and no matter how hard I practice, after eighth grade, I was not going to play basketball. And he said, business is like that too. Certain companies, no matter how hard they try, if they don't have the right skill set, will never be great. And in today's world, only great or terrible gets shared. And so that's the starting point. We try to really understand what this company could do great. And then we look for a solution and how to brand it and how to position it. But ultimately, you have to start with understanding the DNA of the company. And every company has a different team basis. And if you have a talent team that's really good analytical linear thinkers, they're not going to be dreamers. And if you have a dream story you want to communicate, you better go to a Nike or an Apple because they know how to do that story versus, we're great at creating algorithms.
I agree. I mean, this comes back to the point that we discussed yesterday, that Apple may not be doing the best product in the world. I mean, like the iPhone, the quality of the iPhone or the picture or image quality of iPhone is very similar probably to what Samsung or LG or whatever is, having out there, right? But it's the ecosystem, it's the feeling, it's the identity that it gives you to use Apple or to use all the Apple products that matches to each other. It's like at the end of the day, they are selling an ecosystem and some kind of a personal identity delivered to the customer, although they don't have like a very, very differentiated product when you compare to the others. So yeah, there's one other topic that's been circulating in my mind a lot, which is called about brand salience. I'm always thinking about this every day when I'm, helping brands. There's a very well-known Professor Byron Sharp, who just pointed out that brand salience is a huge driver for growth. So for people who doesn't know what brand salience means, so he says that people don't make completely rational decisions when they are buying. So they don't think too much. For example, when you go to a store, like to buy milk, you don't spend hours going through each milk or each SKU at the store. You just, pick whatever comes up to you handy, right? So he says that if a brand pops into the customer's mind in a positive fashion, in a sustainable way, they are going to probably more willing to choose it. Especially this is, I think, very quite true for some of the FMCG brands because you have like 100 toothpaste types, right, when you go to a store. So in that sense, giving ads or being everywhere matters. So this comes to the question that the multi-channel strategy of should brands be everywhere and should they always be on? Because there's like a belief that you have to produce content every day, you have to push content every day through every channel if possible. What do you think about this? Should brands be everywhere and always on?
Well, let me unpack it in two parts. The first part is, yes, I think brands are still relevant and important because with so many choices, consumers can't pick up every computer and say, well, this one has this processor and this one has this too many, or this shampoo has this ingredient. So brands, the best brands work as shortcuts to help you. I can't figure it out. And step one is to make sure your brand is a shortcut and stands for something that helps people become a shortcut. And to tie to your first story, everyone talks about Apple, but to me, the essence of the Apple brand is I don't have to read the instructions when I buy an Apple product for me. Okay, it's just intuitive. You can figure it out. You don't have to push F1 code to. It is no instructions. Just use it and you'll figure it out. All right, so that's a good shortcut for me. Now the next problem is where do you tell that story, which is part two. Do you want to be everywhere? And based on my last conversation about if you're average at everything, you're invisible. We tell our clients that the best strategy is not to take $1 and spend 10 cents here and 10 cents here and 10, because if you take what we call the peanut butter approach and spread it everywhere, it's going to be invisible. Part of success today is picking touch points, consumer experience, whether it's channels or ways to engage with customers, customer care, marketing communications, and picking a few and being extraordinarily at those, or being powerful to break through. So if you're doing a little Instagram and you're doing a little TikTok and you're doing a little advertising, it's unlikely you'll be great at all, and more likely you'll just do stuff that people won't notice. It's sort of like when you look at Super Bowl ads, which is a good test of the 50 marketers spending X millions of dollars a second, you will only remember 10 commercials after seeing 30 at the Super Bowl. And that means, 50. 30 people spent a fortune and it went nowhere. And only 10 figured out to break through. And of those 10, 5 gets you to remember, did you see the funny commercial with the sock puppet? But I have no idea why I wouldn't buy that. It was just a funny thing. But 5 will figure out how to both get your attention, have you share the story, and make you believe that you don't have to read instructions when you buy an Apple product. So I think part one is a brand is more important than ever in a super cluttered world. Step one is to have a story that helps you use that brand effectively, which is hard to do by itself. And then step two is to tell that story not everywhere, but focus your resources, because it's really hard to break through in any. So if you're going to do the Super Bowl, you better be one of those 5 brands that matter, because otherwise you'll spend the same amount of money and you'll be invisible.
Yeah, because what I also tell to brands that are trying to be everywhere, or that are trying to be, keep up with the constant content game and, thing, it's about the mental and mental resources and budget resources, financial resources that you have. Because it also requires, for example, if you are getting ready as a brand for the Super Bowl and you are trying to be in that top 5, then it's better that maybe you just don't push any content while getting ready for that, because you don't have that mental time and budget energy to, push content while you are getting ready for Super Bowl, right? Yep. So that's what I'm always giving brands. Okay, you might have budget resources, but do you have the mental resources to be creative, to come up with ideas every day? It's not only about budget at the end of the day. It's about also being creative.
And being able to be extraordinary at it. And it's really hard to do. And you should, certainly if the feeling that if you write it, if you produce it, people will come, it's over. You should pretend as a marketer you're producing a program on Netflix, and people are scrolling, and if it's not great, no one's going to recommend you. Did you see Wednesdays on Netflix?
Exactly.
Yeah, and until you get to be, and that's incredibly hard to do between talent, money, and luck. But if you're trying to do 5 of those or 10 of those, your odds of hitting it out of the park, as we say in baseball, are shrinking.
And the funny thing, not the funny thing, but the reality is that if a content is really good, for example, if a TikTok content is really good of a brand or if of an influencer, whatever, then it goes viral everywhere. I see it on Instagram, I see it on LinkedIn, I see it on my WhatsApp feed. Somebody is sharing with me because it's so good or funny or educational, whatever. So I mean, probably that person or that brand who is producing that content is producing it only for the sake of TikTok. But then if it's good enough for that medium, then it's viral without that brand paying too much of effort, trying to spread it around, trying to deliver and communicate it around. So this is. So your book, the new book, Seeing the Half, is there a specific date that is going to be launched? Because I'm getting really curious, and I hope to read it soon.
Yeah, it's coming out in the spring in 2023, and it talks about how marketers need to do a better job of seeing ways to grow their business beyond the product, as we were talking. Most companies are, here's my pencil, and I'm going to spend forever making sure the yellow is perfect and it's sharp, and and that's great. But how else might that fit in someone's life? And this gives different lenses you can look through as a marketer to say, how do I create a story, an experience, an offer that is going to break through beyond having a pencil that's yellow.
Perfect. As a wrap up, I have a few questions that are, some of them are related to business because I'll ask a few brands of your favorite brands, and some are about some recommendations. So what's your favorite brand in general? And why?
Well, I'm not going to say Apple because we spent too much time, although they're doing lots of things right. And, I have been a fan of theirs for a long. I have a new brand that I sort of like, and it's maybe unexpected. And it's the New York Times. And for me, sorting out information, facts are interesting, but there's a lot of facts. For me, the Times brand helps me focus on why these facts matter and what I should help, the editorial part and the analysis part of the Times. And also some of the new products they're doing. They bought a company, they launched a new product, and I just wrote about it, called Wirecutter. And Wirecutter does reviews and tells you which is the best washing machine and which is the best phone to buy. And they give you advice on how to sort through this because it's so complicated. And if you look at most other review sites, they tell you, here are the pros and cons of this, here's the pros and cons of this. And, their analysis is thorough, but complicated to figure out. And what I liked about Wirecutter, it cut to the chase. If I want to get the best noise canceling headphones, I don't want to review 15 headphones and find out this one is gray, this one's black, this one does music better, this one does, subway cancellation better. I want to say, here are the top 2, and here's a click, and if you want to get it. So I think Wirecutter and their combination with the New York Times gives them the credibility. So you believe that they maybe actually have tested it. But the simplicity of helping me sort through decisions. So that's the New York Times is for me, an important brand in understanding what's going on in the world.
I think they are a great example of, everyone was talking about physical newspapers are dead and these companies will go bankrupt probably in the future. And they are a great example of how a company has shifted from physical to a hybrid model, which is like they still have the physical newspapers, right? I mean, I see it everywhere now, and I read it also, but their physical offerings are very interesting. And I use actually wire cutters while I was buying a few stuff for my home too. And because I have some kind of a trust, because it's from New York Times,
Right,
And
exactly.
as you said, I don't want to read all the reviews in Google and then trying to find out which one is a biased review or paid review or whatever. So I'll
Exactly.
just, yeah.
It's a combination of the fact that they bought it, and and they bought other brands in the sports arena, but they're building dimension in different categories when their core essence of they actually have reporters that do the work and do the research versus most news organizations just taking feeds and just sharing with potentially no more accuracy than Instagram or Facebook. I think is a more relevant differentiation than ever.
Perfect. My other question is about New York City. So what's your favorite restaurant in New York City? I think this is a question that a lot of New Yorkers ask to each other, or new ones.
Yeah, I like I like a restaurant called The Smith, and The Smith there are 4 or 5. It's more of an American hamburger casual place. There's a good energy, and my favorite location is there's a Smith across from Lincoln Center in New York City, and you can sit outside and you can often see a better, more interesting show of people walking up and down Columbus Avenue than you can inside Lincoln Center. So I like the food, but I like its connection to sidewalk dining, which has now become ubiquitous. It used to be something you did in Paris or different other locations, but I like the Smith because it has an energy. It's not so much about the food; it's more about the energy of the restaurant.
Mm-hmm. How about your favorite cafe? Favorite place to pick up coffee?
And I'm not in the coffee savory group. I'm in the functionality group. And so my favorite thing is after I sometimes jog in the morning, and after I come back and I start my day, I will on the app order a Dunkin' and pick up the Dunkin' coffee. So it's more about convenience and knowing that when I walk and location that I could just not even stop and I just grab the cup that says Allen, and I don't have I'm not into although it's healthy to do, sitting and savoring. It's more the paper cup that sits next to the desk. So as I punch away, I can work it down in the first hour of the day.
I find these questions really helpful because if for listeners who have been to New York City, it's like at every square feet there is one restaurant or one cafe, and I always wonder. And also when I select a place to eat or to have coffee, I always wonder what's the reason that I'm here, because there are like thousands of restaurants or coffee shops that you can go. And that differentiation is really something that makes me quite curious every day. For example,
for me, it's the app and it's the frictionless, that I don't have to talk to anybody, that I don't have to wait, it's on the direct route, and I can just go in, pick up the coffee, and go to what I want to do. So it's not the best coffee, it's not the best experience. It's not the ambiance of the couch I would sit in and the music they're playing. I go for those experiences sometimes, but for every day, I look for a frictionless experience, which is another key marketing word. That if there's any friction in most purchases, there's not enough product difference to care. So you go for the fastest. And for me, that's the solution to coffee.
Yeah. And one ad on my site is that there's a coffee that I found. It's a really old one, which is called Abraso. It's on the Ukrainian village close to Lower East. They don't allow laptops. There is no Wi-Fi. And they don't have oat milk, which I would, rather have like an oat latte. But the reason that I go there and travel there with a metro from here is that it's a great place to really read a book or just jot ideas, because they play really good music. And then there's like the cake coming out of the kitchen, warm every half an hour. So I go there in order to deep dive into a book. But this is not the place that I go every day because it's far away from where I live and I cannot open a laptop there.
It's like great marketing advice, because if you're not extraordinary at one thing, you have to be extraordinary at book reading or extraordinary at rapid frictionless. But if you try to do the same, quick, but you have a place for quiet, but there's Wi-Fi, you'll be average at everything, and you'll struggle in the market.
Exactly. And one final question is, what's one book that you would recommend on marketing for listeners or business in general?
I tend to recommend people. There are lots of marketing books, but the broader marketers are. I think part of marketing is to my first job interview. The CEO, after I gone through the first interviews, said, "All right, you had a good day. I'm going to have, I have one more question for you, Alan." I was ready to ask, marketing segmentation. What is he going to ask me? And he said, "What was the last book you read? What was the last show you went to? And what was the last movie you saw?" And he asked that because he felt that this was at Ogilvy and Mather. He wanted at that point everyone at Ogilvy to be the client's eyes and ears and to see what was going on, because understanding culture and being able to see was important to being a good marketer. So for me, my last book was the story of the Wright brothers, because I tend to read different books. And the Wright brothers invented the airplane, and you think, oh, what's the big deal? But when you read about how long it took them to do it and how much iteration they had, and how one small thing made the plane crash, but one thing, and how all the experts in the field said it couldn't be done, and it took two people with no aeronautics experience, two bicycle manufacturing guys in Ohio. And so to me, that's an important lesson for marketing, because nothing is easy. Sometimes conventional wisdom, if you just say, this is the way you make a beer, and this is how it should do, you're going to be in trouble. And so it was a good lesson in marketing, because it showed you how hard it is, and you have to iterate to get it right. And if it's 80% right, it fails. If it's 90% right, it fails. It has to be 100% right to fly. And that's a really important lesson for marketing.
Well, the book for Wright brothers, I will check that today, because I'm dedicating this afternoon for some reading, which I haven't been doing for a while. So I will make sure that I'll check that. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. So I'm really looking forward to have your book in my hands, Seeing the How, that is publishing in April or May 2023. I'll look out to that. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It was my pleasure. Enjoyed doing it. Thank you for inviting me.